two-time All-Star, NBA All-Defensive Team member, and NBA Defensive Player of the Year runner-up. These are just some of the accomplishments Roy Hibbert accumulated by 2014. But what if I told you that just 3 years later, in 2017, he would find himself out of the league? In this video, we are going to revisit Roy Hibbert's glory days and find out what caused the rapid decline of his NBA career. 11 years ago in Indiana, the Pacers needed a hero. It was Game 6 of the Eastern Conference semifinals against the Knicks, a must-win for the Indiana Pacers, needed to avoid a trip back to Madison Square Garden for a treacherous Game 7. New York held a tight 2-point lead over Indiana with 5 minutes remaining. The blazing hot Carmelo Anthony, who would end the night with 39 points, received a post-entry pass and spun left past the overreaching Paul George, heading for what looked like a massive tomahawk dunk. But it just wasn't meant to be. Just before Anthony's dunk could go through the hoop, 26-year-old defensive ace Roy Hibbert, Indiana's 7'2" center, managed to get his outstretched left arm between Anthony and the rim. The block, Hibbert's fifth of the night, sent the once nervous Indiana crowd into a frenzy and led to a Lance Stevenson basket on the other end, sparking a game-changing 9-0 Indiana run that would clinch both the game and the series for the Pacers. The block instantly became the defining moment of Hibbert's career. Yet 5 years later, Hibbert, one of the best rim protectors in basketball, was out of the league. To find out exactly how this happened, we're gonna take this story back to 2011. It was Hibbert's 4th season in the league, and the first season in which his defensive impact garnered media attention and recognition. As an offensive player, Roy Hibbert was your average starting center, with 12.8 points and 8.8 rebounds per game on 49% shooting from the field. But his defense was what set him apart from the competition and made him special in the first place. In season 2011-2012, Hibbert finished 5th in the league in blocks per game and 4th in total blocks, which significantly helped Indiana become the 9th best defensive team in the NBA. That year, both Hibbert and the Indiana Pacers thrived, with Hibbert selected for his first All-Star appearance and the Pacers earning the 3rd seed in the East. After eliminating the Orlando Magic in the first round of that year's playoffs, the Pacers went on to face the Miami Heat and even pushed them to 6 games. In Game 3, which Indiana won by 19 points, Roy Hibbert had a spectacular performance, finishing the game with 19 points, 18 rebounds, and 4 blocked shots. Even though they eventually lost the series, the Indiana Pacers looked like the only team who could really challenge the Miami Heat in the years to come. One significant thing that made Hibbert a force on the defensive end was the NBA's verticality rule. He was a master at playing within the league's rules on verticality, which allowed a player attempting to block a shot to jump straight up with their arms extended. His ability to jump straight up and rarely be whistled for fouls allowed Indiana to play an extremely aggressive style of defense, in which the Pacers played out on the perimeter to eliminate 3-point shots without really worrying whether an opposing player might get a path to the basket. If that happened, Hibbert would be in the paint to clean up the mess. Eventually, the media started posting articles about Hibbert testing the limits of this rule. Hibbert executed this so effectively that even LeBron James, frustrated by what he perceived as uncalled fouls, once referred to it as his verticality rule, suggesting that officials allowed Hibbert to utilize it more than other players. Utilizing a strategy centered around Hibbert, the Pacers topped the league in defensive efficiency next season, according to NBA Advanced Stats. Hibbert ranked among the top 5 in the league for blocks and defensive win shares, but unfortunately didn't make the All-Star team that year. After beating the Hawks and the Knicks in 2013 NBA playoffs, the Pacers went on to face the Miami Heat again, but this time in the Eastern Conference Finals. Against Miami, Hibbert significantly stepped his offensive game up, since the Heat didn't really have any big men to match up against him. The Pacers pushed the Heat even further this year, mainly because of Hibbert's spectacular series, but still couldn't get over the hump. In a 7-game losing effort, Roy Hibbert surpassed his season averages by a mile, scoring 22 points and grabbing 10 rebounds per game on 55% shooting from the field. Considering Indiana's youth and recent playoff success, the future looked bright for the Pacers. Next year, in the 2013-2014 NBA season, the Indiana Pacers once again led the league in defensive efficiency, limiting opponents to just 97 points per 100 possessions. The first half of the season looked promising for the Indiana fans, but the second half unfortunately marked the beginning of the end for Roy Hibbert's All-Star level play. That year, Hibbert made his second All-Star game and looked like the clear favorite to win the Defensive Player of the Year award. But after the All-Star break, something changed. Hibbert's averages dropped significantly, as well as his defensive effort. And even though Indiana finished the regular season as the number 1 seed in the East, they sure didn't play like one in the upcoming playoffs. First round playoff series against the Atlanta Hawks majorly exposed Hibbert's defensive flaws. The Hawks made his rim protection skills almost useless, as they played with 5 players who could shoot threes at all times. In Game 5 of the series, Indiana lost by 10 points and was on the verge of being knocked out of the playoffs by the 8th seed. Roy Hibbert finished the game without a single point or rebound for the first time in his playoff career. He looked slow, unmotivated, and borderline useless on the court. The Pacers managed to win the series in 7 games, mostly due to the large gap in talent, but the Hawks gave other teams a solid blueprint on how to beat the Pacers. In a loss in Game 1 of the next series against the Washington Wizards, Hibbert had another historically bad game. Roy finished the game with 0 points, 0 rebounds, 5 fouls, and 2 turnovers. Yet another game without a single point or a rebound. After the game, Hibbert promised the fans that he is going to change some things up and come back stronger for the next game. In Game 2, Hibbert kept his promise, scoring 28 points to go along with 9 rebounds on 77% shooting from the field. The Indiana Pacers continued with good play, closing the series against the Wizards in 6 games. Despite Indiana's high hopes, LeBron James and the Miami Heat were waiting for them on the other side of the Eastern Conference Finals yet again. Roy Hibbert had a solid series, putting up numbers close to his regular season averages, despite having another scoreless game. But it just wasn't enough to beat the stacked Miami Heat team, and the Pacers got knocked out of the playoffs in Game 6. Hibbert finished his historically bad playoff run with the worst efficiency rating of all time by an All-Star player. He played another year in Indiana before eventually getting traded and starting to bounce from team to team, without finding a single good fit for his style of play. In July of 2018, Hibbert officially announced his retirement and recently opened up a YouTube channel where he does different sorts of analysis and commentary regarding the NBA, so go check him out if you want after you're finished watching this video. The steep decline of Roy Hibbert's performance can be explained by a few things. Just a few weeks before the start of that year's playoffs, the NBA changed their stand on the verticality rule, so the refs started calling more and more blocking fouls, especially on Hibbert, since that way of protecting the rim was his specialty. Another reason for Roy Hibbert's fall from grace is simply that the league learned new tricks and Hibbert didn't. The NBA has become much quicker and far more reliant on three-point shooting from everyone on the court, including big men. The teams in the league just aren't willing to gamble on slow centers anymore, and Hibbert was one of the absolute slowest. The last potential reason for Hibbert's fall-off was his battle with mental health. It was reported that Hibbert frequently visited a sports psychologist when he wasn't playing well or was upset. He also stated that he was going through depression because he wasn't in the spotlight as much due to his teammates like Paul George and Kobe Bryant.